Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you're having a wonderful day. I know that, speaking about the weather is a very local thing, and we are a national show, but I gotta say that here at the studio, boy, I did not see any cats or dogs, but it is raining them. Incredible weather. Hopefully everyone out there stays safe, because I know that if there's any kind of weather here, that means there is probably much more severe weather in other parts of the country. Of course, there's also the forest fires that are happening out in California. Best of luck to everyone out there. I know they're unfortunately a yearly event, but man, the footage that comes out every year is just incredible. So with that being said, everyone, welcome into the show. First things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including a link to our guest website, to any articles, videos, products, reviews, anything like that we talk about here on Computer America, you can find at our website. And also I think we should have a new review coming up. If you're watching the video portion, this Phoenix flashlight should be the next review going up here later this afternoon. It should be very, very fun product to review. And by the way, the pictures on the side are absolutely hilarious, because I know that they're for military and search and rescue and things like that, but the pictograms are just very fun to try to decipher. So best of luck with that. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get things started. So, joining us today in the first part of the show is none other than TIFCA. And if you don't recognize the name, maybe recognize Immersed. I believe they've transitioned from one to the other. We'll be sure to ask about why the name change. Is it a refocus? Is it something completely different that they're doing this year? But as they joined us last year and I believe the year before, always a pleasure to talk with the executive director of the entire shindig, and that would be Mr. Neil Snyder. So let's go ahead and 1 second, we'll bring him on. So everyone, welcome onto the show once again, Mr. Neil Snyder. Neil, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you again for welcoming on the show. It's always a pleasure.
It is always a lot of fun to talk to you, because you kind of give us a chance to talk about what's happening, what's new, what's interesting, and what we're looking forward to in technology. And so often on the show, we get caught up in, what's kind of currently happening, what are the pitfalls and things like that. And you come on and you tell us what to be excited about. So we definitely love having you on, and we're happy that you could join us. So with that being said, I think first things first, tell us a little bit about the International Future Computing Association, or TIFCA, as we just said. And if you would like to kind of roll in how Immersed has played a role or transitioned away from, answer those two together if you would.
Sure. Okay. So the International Future Computing Association, or TIFCA for short, actually there's a history there. It goes back all the way to 2009, so it's not something that just appeared. It's actually been around for some time.
Mm-hmm.
It started off as the Stereoscopic 3D Gaming Alliance, so it had a very big focus on 3D gaming. So when I'm talking about 3D gaming, I'm talking about 3D glasses with television, with console, with PC, later with smartphones that you could experience things in true 3D. And there needed to be a representative organization for that. And what happened was, I think it was 2013, if I'm not mistaken,
Mm-hmm.
Oculus got their start. And Oculus actually got their start through our other community called Meant to Be Seen, or MTBS3D.com. And it was determined that, hey, there's a lot we can do for this market. Why are we limiting ourselves to just stereoscopic 3D gaming? So what we did as an organization was we had the organization renamed to the Immersive Technology Alliance. So that was inclusive of stereoscopic 3D gaming. However, we expanded our mandate to look at other types of immersive technology. So stereoscopic 3D, virtual reality, augmented reality, haptics, and so on. Now, what happened was, with each, through the history of compute and compute media, we made a discovery. Okay, so actually two things happened. First, there was a second organization called the Open Gaming Alliance, or the OGA, and it was determined that, between our two organizations, we had a lot in common. So we decided to merge the organizations together into one. So our memberships merged, our mandates merged, so that was step one. Step two was, it's not enough to just join two organizations to build a bigger one. We wanted to do something with the organization. So we looked around us, we looked at our history, and we made a discovery. And the discovery was that with each step of compute and compute media, there are these three distinct elements. Okay, so there's what we call compute performance and platforms. So that means PC, console, smartphone, cloud, artificial intelligence. So that's one core pillar. A second core pillar is immersive technology, which of course we're very experienced with. So that includes virtual reality, augmented reality, 3D haptics, and so on, and advanced display as well. Anything to do with immersion. And then the third pillar is innovative content and applications.
Right.
So yes, we're excited about what's today. However, we're even more excited about what's tomorrow. So preparing for what's next.
Yeah.
So these three pillars, even though they stand on their own, we found them to be interrelated. So if we want to look at immersive technology, so let's say virtual reality, you can have this fantastic head-mounted display with huge amounts of resolution. However, if you don't have the compute horsepower to drive it, you're not going to get anywhere. Also, you could have the compute horsepower, you could have the immersive technology, but again, if you don't have that content, you're going to have yourself a very impressive paperweight. So these three elements are interrelated. So they stand on their own and they succeed on their own, but we found them to be interrelated. So going back to the organization, if we look at these three distinct pillars, our mission is to enable what's next. Or our tagline is, our job is to build what's next. So what we do is we get the ecosystems together to identify what's next and to cohesively address it, to collaborate around it, to build the next big thing, if you will.
Right.
Now going back to your question about Immerse, yes, you're correct. So what happened was, you're partially correct. What happened was Immerse started out in 2014. It was originally hosted in Toronto. Okay, they actually ran in Toronto for 5 consecutive years. And the reason why it was founded was, in those days, or at least when it started out, there was no conference available on the East Coast that spoke to virtual reality and immersive technology. So everyone was in California, like there were all kinds of events going on in California and Silicon Valley, but there was literally nothing on the East Coast. So we said, if this market is going to grow, people need opportunities on the East Coast. So that's why we founded Immersed, and it was very successful for 5 years.
Yeah.
Now, what happened, though, is that we started, so last year, so for the 2018 edition, with our updated mandate, okay, so with the TIFCA's future computing mandate, we said, we need to go beyond immersive technology, inclusive of, but we need to look at other markets as well. So that was a test case in Toronto last year. We kept the immersed name, but we expanded the content to go beyond immersive technology. And what happened was, based on the success of that event, the chairs of TIFCA and the sponsors, they're like, something this important has to happen in Silicon Valley. It's unique. We're getting the top industry leaders together, and we love Toronto. Toronto's great. There's opportunity to be had with this. That it would make it that much easier for the technology companies to get involved and to participate if this was in Silicon Valley. So what we did was, next week, really, so November 5th, 6th, we're running the International Future Computing Summit. And the other reason for the name change was because immersed on its own didn't speak to the whole mandate. People associated it strictly with immersive technology, when in fact it's a much more holistic approach to compute. So the conferences, So that's why it was renamed to the IFC Summit. So that speaks to future computing, and it speaks to why we moved the conference under the new name. But there's even more in the works, but that's just to get you started there, Ben.
Right. No, that was a great introduction, and of course we can break we can even break some of the things that you talked about into further topics. But I did want to kind of touch back on future computing, and really I wanted a sense of where you and your organization and the people that you have come and speak and things like that. I know that there are even skeptics that come on this show, and whenever new technology comes out, they always say, that's nothing to really be concerned about. It's going to go away soon, that kind of thing. And I wanted to know what role your organization wants to play in, let's say, emerging technology, like not even immersive technology, but emerging technologies. I know that virtual reality and augmented reality have been a thing since the 80s or 90s. In one form or another, they've really taken a leap into consumers' homes in the past couple of years, ever since the Oculus Rift was starting to develop. And if assuming you have a couple $1,000s or even a couple $100s, you can have virtual reality in your home. Or even, hey, if you have a smartphone, you can get a form of it with just a simple cardboard cutout. These are all possibilities, but I wanted to know, again, what role your organization and really what you plan for with these summits and these talks and things like that. Are you strictly trying to hype the new technology? Are you putting it into the proper context? Are you, trying to drive innovation within these fields by, having that conversation between people who already work within the industry? I mean, what are you hoping to do with these talks? To facilitate or to hype? Yeah.
Okay, so first, very little that we do has anything to do with hype. We're not here to promote a given direction. We're here to enable a direction. Now I spoke earlier about future computing, and it speaks to this ecosystem that is working to enable what's next. So I think the next question really is what's next, okay? And once we've identified that, then we move ahead with it. So we have identified it. So what's next? So if we look at what's going on in the market today, we're seeing announcements by the likes of Google. So you've got Google Stadia. Mm-hmm. Sony has PlayStation Now. Xbox has Project X Cloud. Hatch Entertainment has cloud gaming technologies. These are, I'd say, starting points. Okay. What's mm-hmm. happening is computing is heading into this era of where content creators write once, so they create their content once, and it automatically works on a multitude of devices. So let's say there's a game that you really like, you get that game, and it will automatically work on your television. It will automatically work on your smartphone. It will automatically work on your PC. All right, but not just work, not like a one-size-fits-all. The vision is that it will adjust itself so that you get the best possible experience according to what you're using. Okay, so for example, the way we experience life on a smartphone and tablet is significantly different than the way we would experience, that content on, let's say, a television or on a personal computer or a laptop computer. Okay, the nature of the media that we use defines the experience as well as the content, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is there's been, so you've probably heard, I shouldn't say you probably have heard, but one of the big breakthroughs is 5G, right? Yeah. So we have this new wireless ability that lets us deliver a huge amount of data that we couldn't before. But it's not limited to 5G. There's other technologies as well. There's Wi-Fi 6. There's high-speed broadband. I mean, there's a whole list, and there's more to come. So normally what happens is, if we think of our devices, if we're talking about a smartphone, we buy our smartphone, and there's limited processing included in that smartphone. It could be high, but it's limited to what it's built with. And then in steps, you buy another smartphone, and each time you upgrade, you're able to do a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Same with PC, same with console, same with pretty much any computing device. Well, what's happening is, now that we're starting to enter this era where there's a lot more bandwidth for distributing all kinds of data and information, what if we could go beyond what that computing device is capable? What if we could, let's say what if your device is not only powered by what's inside of it, but is supplemented or enhanced by a very powerful cloud computer or a whole series of cloud computers? And what if you could, instead of waiting for the next upgrade, you could maybe each year, I'm just going to use an example, each year you get this huge visual upgrade or huge capability upgrade without necessarily changing your device. Now, but the other way too, which is also equally important, is your device could be upgraded. Okay, so it's like it's a hybrid scenario where you've got remote processing enhancing your localized experience, and what you do locally is equally important because sometimes the connectivity isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So this is where things are heading. So we're heading into the industry's heading into this direction where content creators, will hopefully be able to do a lot more with less. And when I say less, I mean having to code a multitude of times for like countless devices. And we're looking, I think we're moving into a future where our computing devices will be able to achieve more because we're going to have more processing available to us. So it's a very, very exciting thing. And when we look at things this way, it's huge. It's like we've been describing it as the next era in computing, and it's a journey. Now, going back to your question about the organization, well, what do we do? Mm-hmm. Well, I've described a series of products. I've described Stadia. I've described, Project xCloud. I mean, there's a multitude of products, and these are products, okay? And they're going to be, each will be successful in its own right according to its own ability. But for an era to happen, you need to have a landscape, okay? So there have to be, standards in place so that things interact with each other. There have to be tools so that content creators can create what they want to create. There has to be, cloud service providers that can, deliver the data and the content and the processing that's necessary. And you need clients. I mean, that means smartphones and PCs and tablets and things that may not even exist yet, but have a direct fit in this ecosystem.
Right.
And they all have to find a way to collaborate with one another so that the ecosystem works. And by the way, when I say collaborate, I don't mean, everyone's thinking kumbaya. I mean that you have to have an ecosystem in place where products work and they can effectively compete in that ecosystem. So our place in this is that the industry does get together, okay, and they say, well, this is what we need to achieve. This is what what deliverables are important, so that the content creators can deliver what they ultimately need for their customers. These are the kinds of standards that are necessary. We work with the outside parties that specialize in that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you need a place where the ecosystem can get together and determine what needs to be done so that this era happens. Okay, so it's effectively using the future computing ecosystem on a task. Now, not everything will necessarily happen in TIFCA. Okay, but the discussions start in TIFCA. Yeah. The collaborative discussions start in TIFCA, and then we outsource what's necessary through other standards groups or parties that are really good at what they do.
Absolutely, and of course, again, a lot more to break down there. And I do want to say that you did touch on a number of products that I was thinking of when you mentioned this idea to client to cloud revolution. And for everyone out there watching the video portion, we have your PDF document up that shows kind of a lot of these talking points in a nice visual. You guys spent a lot of time on this, and obviously being able to thumb through this at people's own leisure is going to be another thing. I mean, going out there and hearing it yourself, we'll talk about how people can do that, but this is the next best thing to that. So obviously, with all that different technology and all this kind of thing, I mean, it just seems like this is what's happening now, but then you also have to, I guess, is TIFCA trying to extrapolate that to here's where this needs to go? And I know you said you were you are facilitating the conversation and kind of providing the landscape, but man, you guys have been at kind of predicting the future for a couple of years now. You must be pretty good at kind of seeing where these things are eventually going to head, right?
Well, I have help. I mean, our organization's chaired by Intel, Advanced Micro Devices, and M2 Insights, and we have a strong advisory team as well. And we're very public. I mean, everything like the vision document. This was something that was co-authored. When I author something on I tend to blog on Gamma Sutra mm-hmm. and LinkedIn, and I go through a review process to make sure that it's in line with what's going on in the market. I can't just talk my head off. It has to be based on something. And if you were to look carefully, like if we want to use the International Future Computing Summit as an example, you'll find that when we share on LinkedIn, it's that it tends to get likes by Intel and AMD and others. So there shouldn't be any surprises here. This is where things are heading. The question isn't so much, is this where things are heading? It's more a question of getting the industry to collaborate so that this ecosystem works really, really well. And that's what everybody wants, so they could effectively compete in this ecosystem. And I'm seeing, I'm very proud, to see such, arch competitors, sharing similar insights so publicly. So that's a good sign that this is important.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed, that these companies, despite how the fans can get sometimes when you talk about, they put themselves in camps, they put themselves in PlayStation or Xbox, PC or console, or Microsoft versus, Apple or, whatever. Like, people like to put themselves in camps because I think it's kind of like that football thing. We like to cheer for our teams. But I too have found that after speaking with a lot of people within the industry that, they're trying to push their product, and they're trying to advance, but they know that sharing what they can and having that conversation even with their competitors leads to a lot of benefit on both sides. It's not just about keeping all the secrets for yourself. It's about advancing the technology as a whole. And it sounds like, some of those technologies, again, that you mentioned, are really going to sneak up on people because, 5G has been touted. 5G in a few ways has been lied about. I'm looking at, not to name any names, but AT&T has 4G LTE, or no, it's a 5GE. That's what they're calling it, where it's kind of like the evolution of 5G. It's not 5G, but it's evolving into 5G. I don't know how the heck they manage that, but 5G is something that People, when they buy their next generation of smartphones, they should be in there. Depending on certain places, it's going to be there. I kind of have to ask you, and this is just getting into one particular topic real quick. 5G, I'm excited about it. Obviously, I think it's like 100 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. Or no, I'm sorry, definitely not 1 terabyte. But I think it's like 100 gigs up and down. That simultaneous throughput, and you're going to be able to connect a lot of devices. The big problem, though, is, of course, proliferation. And the idea that these antennas are going to be in places where people are commuting, work, things like that. It's going to be very hard to get a solid 5G signal. And I think people are going to have to warm up to the idea, if they want to use this in their homes, they're going to have to buy their own 5G antenna. And it's going to come with a cell plan and that kind of thing. It should be affordable to some extent, but the antennas can be, $700-$800 by themselves. How excited are you, are your clients, people you've talked to, the industry? 5G is definitely an upgrade, but it's going to be a slow rollout because of, just from what I understand, the reach of a 5G signal. Are you excited about it?
It's not so much about being excited about it as in 5G alone. I mean, granted, it does sound like it's going to take time to roll out. Mm-hmm. Like anything worthwhile, anything worthwhile isn't going to be easy.
Right.
However, in my conversations, I would say that very little of it is dependent on 5G alone. There's a whole ecosystem. So if we're looking about, let's look at some examples, okay? So, I mean, it's public information like Google Stadia, mm-hmm. Microsoft Project xCloud, Sony PlayStation Now, NVIDIA's GeForce Now. None of these solutions are dependent on 5G to be successful. There's other ways to get that bandwidth, and all of these methods are enhancing with time. So it's not about whether we're excited about antennas in our doorstep or, how we're going to get our 5G. It's more that we know that this is the direction things are heading. How it appears or what exactly it looks like, it's work in progress. It's understood, like anything, right? But we know this is the direction things are heading, and we're laying down the groundwork for that direction to work.
Yeah, and to the client, let's see, you have this little diagram here, the client to cloud ecosystem, and under the infrastructure, which is why I felt comfortable asking you, is that one of your tenants is means of enablement and network distribution, and distributing a 5G network is going to be very, very critical to the adoption of it. So
it's one method.
Yeah.
It's one method, and maybe, like in one day, or like when it's ready, it will be fine. I mean, maybe there will be 6G or whatever it is. It's a process. I mean, remember, we've spoken year to year, and there's been a lot of things that happen within a year's time.
Yeah, it's I mean, some of the things that we talk about, some of the things that we have discussed that, are, kind of things to watch. I'm not saying that things like virtual reality gaming and, having virtual reality headsets aren't a big deal, but obviously as time goes on, like, yes, those are available. Yes, you should definitely pick them up because they are, they have very different applications nowadays. And trust me, in other fields such as enterprise and business and training, VR is heavily adopted. But now we're talking about things like cloud gaming, which is, this idea that you can have, and by the way, I don't know how familiar you are with Stadia, but I have a question about that. I don't know if you can answer about that too well. But the point is, some of the things that we've talked about in the past that people should be really excited for, they're still around, they're still there, but they aren't, I guess kind of the main experiences that we're looking towards the future for. So things do change from year to year. I will definitely give you that. So with and Neil, with that being said, going back to Stadia real quick, which is Google's cloud gaming platform, I did want to ask you about the technology, just because you seem so knowledgeable about it. Have you heard about? I believe it's their predictive input. I think that they're kind of touting to reduce the input latency for Stadia.
Yes, yeah. So I read about that. Yes.
Do you understand that at all? And feel free to give a little bit of an introduction, or I can do it. But just the general idea of it seems very obvious, but at the same time, it almost seems like the game is going to start playing for you to some extent. It seems
well,
weird.
it's interesting. It's interesting. There's two tales to tell here. Now, first, I can't really speak to the product because I don't work for Google, and I don't have.
And it's not
I only have the information that you have. My understanding is that I wouldn't describe it as the game playing for you, but I think what happens is perhaps it does an analysis and it does a bit of some fortune telling as to what it thinks you will do, and it tries to fill in the gaps where necessary. I'm just taking an educated guess based on what I've read. So that's tale number one. Mm-hmm. Tale number two is I've been very public about this. Actually, is that it's first off, I think it will work. I mean, I've been public about that. I've said, hey, Google has tremendous resources when it comes to artificial intelligence. They said that it's going to take a couple of years, and I think it's if it works, it sounds fantastic. It sounds like a really innovative solution. The other side of the coin, though, is that, well, why is it necessary for Google to come up with that solution? I mean, they're a $280 billion company. That's what I read.
Right.
And wouldn't it be an opportunity if somehow the full ecosystem, and that means the infrastructure and the computing and the distribution and the tools, the whole kit and caboodle, was set up in such a way that these really innovative concepts were unnecessary. I mean, so right now, like Google Stadia, it's a gaming product. Okay, so they have that's one product in mind. However, there's all kinds of opportunities above and beyond video games, inclusive of, but above and beyond that need to be looked at. And in my opinion, I think that it would be beneficial to the full ecosystem, inclusive of Google, if that infrastructure was in place, so that these extra tricks were unnecessary. And I'll use a comparable. Sure. I'll use a comparable that I have a great deal of experience with Stereoscopic 3D gaming, which is how I actually got started in this space. What happened was the software that was available, so the games that people were excited about, in 95% cases, were not designed to be played in 3D. They were just games you bought on store shelves, and what you had to do was you had to use something called a stereoscopic 3D driver. So what it does is it's software that gets between the middle of your game and the display, and it would create a stereoscopic 3D view that didn't exist before. So it would effectively hack into the game. I'm being kind of blunt here, but it would hack into the game, take the DirectX API call. So that's basically the information being passed through the graphics to the graphics card to process, and create a left and right view. So you need a left view for your left eye, a right view for your right eye, and send it to your display. So that's how the most stereoscopic 3D games worked outside of gaming console. Mm-hmm. So this sounds like, it was amazing. That's what originally got me all excited, that you could play these AAA games in full 3D. Unfortunately, though, there were a lot of games that you had to turn down the eye candy. There were games that there were visual artifacts and problems no matter what you did. It wasn't perfect. And wouldn't it have been amazing if the ecosystem had worked together, that all games would work on all 3D displays, and it wasn't necessary to have a 3D driver in the middle. Okay, so that would have been much better. Or what if it was possible? Back in those days, you had to get an individual type of pair of 3D glasses for each television that you owned, or a 3D television or a 3D display. So yes, we can do these creative things to make the technologies work. However, if the ecosystem were to work together in a collaborative form that they could compete in, the sky's the limit. So that's the way we think.
Yeah, no, and obviously these little tricks and things like that, like you said, with the improvements to the infrastructure, they're unnecessary. So obviously these are the kinds of conversations that you would be hearing out there at the event. And actually, speaking of the event, once again, speaking out there at the summit, and I will get here we go, the International Future Computing Summit. Speak to, well, the speakers and who's going to be discussing what topics out there, and what can people expect if if they were to attend. What kind of conversations do you have kind of lined up?
Yes. Okay. Well, the full theme of the show, I mean, it's a future computing event, so it's all about bringing people together to enable or to build what's next. But the core theme is this client-to-cloud revolution, and it's a journey. Okay, so it's this journey to this vision that I've been describing so far. So just some of the top speakers, of course, Arvind Kumar, he's senior principal engineer and architect at Intel Corporation. Daryl Sartain, he's director worldwide head of XR for Advanced Micro Devices. Bibo White, now you may not know the name, but you know his work. He was actually one of the early pioneers of the World Wide Web. And the reason he's credited as the first webmaster in the United States. And the reason why we're having him on board, two reasons. First is when it comes to launching a new computing era, he's got the experience. And second, he's very excited about cryptocurrency and blockchain, because he sees it as an enabler, for developing countries to build wealth. So, that's part of this client to cloud. It's like, how do we use it to enable? What can we do that we couldn't do before? Neil Trevitt, he's president of the Kronos Group. He's also vice president of the developer ecosystem for NVIDIA. Mm-hmm. So Kronos Group is one of the biggest open standards organizations. So they're behind products like Vulkan and OpenGL. Vulkan's actually becoming more and more popular in video games. Let's see, Jen McLean, she's head of worldwide business development and small mid-sized studios for Amazon Web Services. The list goes on and on. Vinay Narayan, he's vice president for platform strategy and developer community for HTC Vive, which is one of course, the big virtual reality device manufacturers. Linda Selheim, she's education program manager at Epic Games. Why is Linda speaking? Because she's going to be talking about how this client-to-cloud revolution could enable students, that they'll be able to get access to computing tools and resources that they otherwise wouldn't have access to. It's a big enabler. Let's take a look, see here. The list goes on. Jeffrey Shee, this is interesting. He's product manager for artificial intelligence at Unity Technologies. Normally when you create a video game, you have to have you still do, but you have a quality assurance team that has to play through the game and look for bugs and problems. And it's a big challenge when you're an independent game studio. Even if you're a large studio, it's very time-consuming work. And they figured out a way that through powerful cloud computing, they can get an artificial intelligence to actually play through the game and look for errors. It's a tool to assist the quality assurance team. So I thought that was really interesting. We've got, of course, an investment community that's going to be heavily involved. Gary Radburn, he's director for virtualization and commercial VR and AR at Dell. Now, what's really interesting with virtualization is you could have a computer that its horsepower is not fully being used. So what if you could take that computing device and divide its resources for different purposes? So he'll go more into what that means, right. But really exciting stuff. One of the big things with this client to cloud ecosystem and this revolution is that we need to look at security issues and legal issues. Like what happens in a world when that horsepower, that computing is divided between local and remote resources. We're touching on that today, but the future probably even more so, right? So Nima Beatty, he's global head of cybersecurity solutions at Lenovo. So Lenovo, of course, is a big name. Mm-hmm. And Paul Lanois, he's actually a top security legal expert for a company called Fieldfisher, and he goes around the world talking about security issues. So these are just some things. The list goes on and on.
I see here that you have Dr. John Petty, who's been on the show and friend of the show, and John John Petty Research and the work that they do over there is always, very eye-opening. So I'm glad that you're able to get him too.
Oh my goodness. I think he's been to maybe he's been to every one, or maybe he's only missed one of our events, and but he keeps coming back, and it's always a pleasure to have him. And he's going to be talking about what's next. And I've seen some of his. It's going to be something else. He's really. I always look forward to John's presentations.
Yeah, you have definitely lined up a lot of people, and it's not just random people who just can speak to this out of passion. You're speaking to a lot of or you have a lot of speakers who are within the industry, within the know, and they're going to take a very measured approach to this. So again, kind of speaks to your not so much hype, just more real good conversation. And like we said, although I did want to pick on you a little bit here, because you mentioned in you had the immersed conventions in Toronto, because you mentioned, like you said, East Coast doesn't have a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of business in New York and on the East Coast, but the technology stand for technology, most if not all of it happens on the West Coast, in California, Silicon Valley, what have you. Now that this is being hosted in Mountain View, I believe, Mountain View, California, what are all the East Coasters supposed to do now? What do? You left them high and dry.
Well, we got to start somewhere.
I got you.
We have to start somewhere, and this has never been done before. And when I say it's never been done, I mean that it's very unusual to have competitors in the market space sharing the same stage. It's just not done, or at least it's not normally done. And the other thing too is this is because we're working to enable an ecosystem, you need certain stakeholders there. You're correct. You're correct. I mean, if you look carefully at the speakers list, and then you compare to the diagram, for the ecosystem, you'll see that each speaker ties into one or more icons in that diagram. So it was very purposeful that each was invited, because they have a certain expertise and they represent a certain segment of the market, and it's absolutely critical that they're speaking to each other.
And of course, as they should, and all the better that they are speaking at your convention. So obviously, let's shift this from who's going to be there to who would you recommend attend a conference like this, and to those that do attend, what are you hoping that they would pick up from this? Because it's more than just contacts. It's actually about the the speakers that you have, the summits that you have, things like that. Who do you want to attend, and what will they learn if they go?
Yes. Okay, so the nature of the people in attendance are people responsible for roadmap, for strategy, when it comes to their companies. So yes, we'd like to see people participating, from that ecosystem map. However, the nature of the people in attendance, yes, they're thinking next quarter, what do I need to know for the next quarter? But really, in this case, the people that are going to get the most out of this are people that, need to think at least 3 to 5 years ahead of the game. Right, that they're starting to plan for the future. They're looking at their content. They're looking at their tools. They're looking at their devices, and they're saying, "Well, where am I going to fit 3 to 5 years from now? And what does my journey look like?" So this is a very unique gathering for that purpose, and I think it's fair to say that nobody has all the answers. I mean, I know we've been talking together for years. We don't have all the answers, but we do know the path on finding those answers, and so that's the kind of people we want to see at the International Future Computing Summit.
Very, very well said. And so obviously this is going to be open. We should probably start talking about times and when this event is actually going to be held, because as I understand it, unfortunately we got you on a little bit late, but it's soon, right? It's next couple of days.
Yes, next week. It runs November 5th and 6th, so that's a Tuesday, Wednesday. Happy Halloween, because we are having a flash sale. We're having a flash sale that I don't know if you want me listing that in your show, but people can get a discounted tickets.
Send it to me after the show, and I'll put it in the show notes, so anyone who goes and checks out the show notes will have a link, and they can just click and go there.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people are welcome to attend. I'm certain that they're going to get a lot out of this.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely love to hear it. And so just looking over our questions, and I want to ask you, kind of before we go any further, Neil, did we not cover anything? I feel like we got a really good overview of what TIFCA has turned into. Did we miss any parts of?
I think this sounds good. I think that the what I would come away with is that computing is changing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we may not see it, like it may not appear right in front of us, but what I look forward to is we might see a change in what our devices look like. We might see a change in what things are capable of. We're going to have to rethink what things are capable of, because I think that shackles are coming off. Like, I think that we're going to, we're going to see a very open door for what can be achieved, as this ecosystem comes into play. I would, reading the headlines of different products and product launches, I personally think there's way too much energy being spent on, how much things cost and, how much per month and how much per product, because that's not the story. The story is that computing is changing, and the way computing is done, the way computing is achieved is changing. Businesses, that stuff will change with the times, but I really think that the industry is moving in a very innovative direction, and we've within TIFCA we've been discussing it as the next era in computing, and that's what we're working towards.
And just to kind of give you a little example of that, just yesterday, one of our correspondents just released a book, and we talked about how he went through a publisher, but he also recommended those do self-publishing, even though he didn't do it. And I think technology is in a way kind of like self-publishing, where self-publishing allowed a lot more people to write their own books and publish their own books and get their books into people's hands. They didn't have to go through a large publisher. It's cheaper for them, and it's cheaper for, of course, places like Amazon to publish those books. But yet Amazon is still making a profit. They're having more people submit books. They're having, more people, drive traffic through that, through the apparatus. That it just feels like, the costs went down for everyone, but I think everyone's better off for it, because, the company is still making money. The people who write the books still make money. It's, the profits are there. It's just the entire industry shifted, and I really do like to think shifted for the better. So I guess now you just have to look for opportunities like that in all parts of computing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a progression. I mean, things are, basically what's happened is we've discovered new abilities that weren't available before, and now the industry is taking steps to take advantage of those abilities. And what can we do? And that's the big question. Like, what can we do? And they're figuring that out.
And of course, to find that out, November 5th through the 6th, Mountain View, California. If you're in the area, definitely consider picking up a ticket, and we'll include links to that. And Neil, by the way, send those over in an email. We'll get them included, and hey, we'll do our thing. So obviously, Neil, last comments, concerns, things like that. People, anything you would like to leave people with besides Happy Halloween?
Well, first, Happy Halloween for sure. Be excited. Look beyond the headlines. What does this mean? And I think the way to, we've been looking at the people attending the conference and working with TIFCA is we're all dreamers. We're all dreamers. And the thing is to turn those dreams into goals, and that's what we're doing.
Absolutely. So, of course, everyone out there can go to TIFCA.com, and then, of course, right up there at the top, the IFC Summit. You can click there, and you can see everything that, we've been kind of talking about for the past couple of hours. So, with that being said, until next year, and hopefully, again, we'll get you on sooner. And, hey, Computer America is looking to, of course, do a lot more traveling here in the next year, next couple of years, actually. Definitely, TIFCA is going to be on my radar. Maybe I'll be able to do this interview with you live out there on the show floor, and that would be very, very fun. So until next time, Neil, thank you so much for coming on to Computer America, as always, and happy Halloween. Have a great day.
You too. Happy Halloween.
All right, have a good one. Bye-bye. All right, everyone, and there he goes. So, we're going to handle that. Again, if you want to check out tickets or you want to check out the website, links at Computer America, definitely check that out. So let's go ahead and continue on here. We only have a couple more minutes left, but that's okay. We love it when our interviews run long, and Neil's always, just a great interview. Love talking to him. Let's talk about computer and technology news. And that is, of course, brought to you by Computer America. Newegg, pick us up. So I think for our first story that we're going to do, and this one, there's so much I want to say and so much that I shouldn't say, because as someone who just kind of monitors this whole thing, it's not good. It's not bad. This has to do with the trade war. It has to do with an ever-evolving Chinese-U.S. relation. And it has to do with the state of technology, because those of you who don't know, technology has this very big, I don't even want to call it problem until it starts to become a problem, where manufacturing happens in China. It's why I have so much issue whenever we try to issue these blanket statements against certain companies like Huawei or what have you, and we don't call out other companies like Apple or Intel or other companies that, even though they're American made, they're American run, they run American products, semiconductors and operating systems, so on and so forth. The basis of it is that just because something is owned in America, but if it's entirely made overseas in China, how much does that really make a difference than any of these other products that are made and founded in China? So, but my point is, there's a huge conversation to be had there that I'm not looking to have right now. I do want to say China establishes a $29 billion fund to wean itself off of U.S. semiconductors. That's right. Shots fired. The Chinese government is looking to move away from American-made products. What this means, trade war woes. I think that globalization has helped a lot of people. It's helped a lot of economies. But then when you start to have certain organizations just completely want to cut off entire sectors of our economy and instead capitalize on them, hey, it leaves another conversation to be had about what can America do about this? What is the Americans' role if, are we just going to let them stand by, take over all of our manufacturing here that should be happening in the United States? And we're going to let them take we're going to let them overtake the semiconductor market, and we're just going to sit there and say, wow, that sucks. No, I really hope not. So let's go ahead and get into this article. China has established a new state-backed semiconductor fund with the intent of advancing its domestic semiconductor initiative and reducing its reliance on U.S. technology. The fund currently sits at about $28.9 billion and is the second of its kind, with the first state-led fund taking place in 2014. That's a big difference between America and China, where America, they can impose taxes, set up these funds, where the government, of course, here in the United States, they can incentivize, they can, have kind of tax breaks and, that kind of thing. We can incentivize certain segments of our marketplace, but then the Chinese government has so much more control and so much more leverage that they can say, you know what, this industry, we're going to make this a huge industry. So here's $29 billion. This is big news. So China is the largest consumer of semiconductors in the world, and Bloomberg reports that, of course, China imports roughly $200 billion of American semiconductors annually. In recent years, China has made moves to simulate its own semiconductor industry, but the back and forth U.S.-China tensions have given Beijing a new sense of urgency. I honestly think that through all the IP theft and all of the things that we hear coming out of China, China is very good at producing things. They're able to take others' intellectual property and produce them ad nauseum. They're not very good at innovation. Not a lot of innovation comes from Chinese researchers, Chinese companies, Chinese semiconductor companies, so on and so forth. So the innovation happens in America. I'm proud to say that. I'm happy to say that. The innovation does indeed happen in America. But that doesn't mean with enough money and enough, essentially enough researchers brought over to China, that doesn't mean that that pendulum can't swing the other way. So with that being said, according to Bloomberg, the fund's capital is coming from state organizations and the Chinese government, with China's Ministry of Finance pouring 22 billion yuan into the fund, which is actually only about 10%. But still, that's a good $2.8 billion. While the fund has also attracted monetary support from other local governments and state-owned enterprise, although how much of that is volunteered? Probably more of a, probably more of a, you should really do this or else we're going to close you down kind of deal. But to cap this all off, China's semiconductor industry, they want to wean itself off of what Americans produce. And of course, then they want to turn around and sell it right back to us. Man, that is a tough sell and really a tough pill as well to show that America is not completely insulated, from just semiconductors. They're a huge business. Again, $200 billion alone goes into China. That doesn't mean that they can't just take that money that they would otherwise spend on other people's semiconductors and instead produce them themselves. So, not insulated. So, with that being said, and hey, everyone in the chat room, happy Halloween. I didn't say that. We said it a couple times with our guests, but I know that it's October 31st. Hey, we wrote an article for you for just this occasion. Go check that out. But no costume. I went as a schleppy Computer America host. That's the best costume I come up with last minute. Hopefully all of you out there are going to do something fun. If you're going trick-or-treating, be safe, be careful, check your candy. Don't accept rides from strangers. That actually happened to me one year when I was much, much younger. I could have sworn it was a prank, but it was just a car full of high school kids, and they wanted me, and I was dressed as something completely awesome. I don't remember what it was. Every year I was awesome. Probably a mummy. But they wanted me to come over and get some candy out of their car, and boy, did I not do that. And I don't think the majority of our audience is abduction. Not okay. I don't want to say abduction worthy because that's kind of insulting. Abduction capable, or at least at our ages, we shouldn't be kind of prone to abduction. But keep an eye out. People do very stupid things on Halloween. People do very silly things, and just hey, have fun with it. And yes, just like Forset in the chat room, don't accept computers from strangers. Yep, only accept random USB thumb drives from people wearing trench coats. That's all we can ask of you. So with that being said, it's so we have time for just one more story. One more story. Let's see if we can. Let's see what looks interesting. Okay, so this one happened yesterday. Huge news, and I think the CEO of Twitter really took a swipe at Facebook as well. And this is what I really enjoy. Like, this is what Facebook should be doing. Obviously, we've talked a lot about political advertising and Facebook and election manipulation using these kinds of things. There's a bit more to the story, but I like the approach that they took. The new policy, which was announced just yesterday, Wednesday, so yesterday on Twitter, it goes into effect on November 22nd, so I'm sure they're going to get everyone to either cancel their ad campaigns or to refund their money, saying that starting November 22nd of this year, there will be no political ads on Twitter. Yes, you can still promote, your widget. Yes, you can still promote your cause and what have you, but political ads are not going to be allowed, which I think is one of the best things that could happen on social media. If we could ban all political advertising on social media, one of the largest issues I think that we face in technology today, which is this ability to get conversation going for political reasons, really takes a hit. And obviously, I'm sure there will be people who will come out the woodwork saying free speech, free speech. Obviously, Twitter, Facebook, and a lot of these other social media companies are private companies, and they can say what kind of speech they want on their platform or don't. I think for either side, not just on one side, but on either side, if both of them lose their ability to target, and I don't use that word lightly, target their audience, their political audience that they want to really promote their message to, then it's a much more even playing ground, and any kind of political speech that happens on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever social platform you use, hopefully becomes much more organic as opposed to driven by money, incentive, and potentially state actors. So there you go. I wanted to, I definitely want to get that out there. And I got to say, Twitter, good job. Those words don't come out of my mouth very often. Twitter, good job, but I definitely am appreciative of that one. So if you're going to go set up a computer tonight, if you're going out to a party, if you're going out with the kids trick-or-treating, or if you are a kid going out trick-or-treating, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. I want to say thank you, so much for tuning in. Oh, by the way, just a real quick thing. Computer America has been on the Google Play Store with, obviously with the music and whatnot for months and months, if not years at this point. But just yesterday, I received confirmation we are now in the Google Podcasts app. So they have an individual app that they have, definitely available on all Google devices. And hey, check us out, Computer America, as you always loved us. So everyone, until next time, have a great day. Thank you. We'll catch you here next time. Bye, everyone.